it's time for the weirdest metaphor that I've ever come up with whenever it comes to music. An album is kind of like an episode of a television series. And we're not talking a sitcom where it's only 30 minutes in length, so it actually clocks in at about 22. I'm talking those hour-long dramas, where they usually clock in at anywhere between 40 to 45 minutes because of commercials and different announcements, blah, blah, blah. We're not talking about shows on HBO or Showtime where it is the full 60-minute runtime. We're talking about those such as House, such as Nip Tuck, such as all of those favorites that you can think of, those high dramas. Arsis has returned with their album Unwelcome, and it is a little less than your traditional sitcom, but there is or your traditional television show, by clocking it at only 37 minutes in length, but it tells a story that's very much like one. Whenever you listen to an album and it has around that 40-minute long length, a lot can be told in just those 40 minutes, whether or not an album is good or bad, whether or not they're able to really increase the variety, keep you, tuned in, so to speak, throughout the whole entire ride. And if an artist is able to keep you tuned in, that's usually a good start. It's usually a good sign. It's usually something that eventually leads to either the album being declared as good, passable, or potentially, in the rare instances where it does more than keep your attention, great. With Arsis' Unwelcome, we are seeing a band that, whenever they started out of the gate, were really subjected to a lot of acclaim, and really were the reason that a lot of people were getting very excited about the modern-day movement of melodic death metal taking a little bit more of a technical route. Now, throughout that time frame, Arsis has definitely struggled with the ups and downs of maintaining a lineup, of moving to a bigger record label, and kind of experimenting and examining their sound a little bit. However, with this album, there is a little bit more of a signature direction that can be really seen and heard with this record. Unwelcome definitely speaks to me like a band that is trying to re-examine themselves, and kind of noted what they did really, really well, and what actually was kind of their bread and butter whenever they first started out. They have that signature, very, very thrashy, very, very technical guitar sound, very, very fluent and, furious solos, and of course those vocals that, even though we've heard them before, this is not exactly a vocal style that is all of that rare, there's still a bit of a uniqueness to it. There's that higher pitched, almost like extreme anger feeling to it, where it almost seems like this person is yelling so furiously and with such, veracity that it just comes out in this higher pitched emission. It's just really, really one of a kind. This sitcom, however, takes a very, very strange turn right in the middle of it, and it's something that only happens for one track, but for one track of this album, we experience Sunglasses at Night, the Corey Hart song, being covered by Arsis, which comes off almost like a technical melodic death metal goes pop style song. I'll be honest with you, I really am not the hugest fan of 80s New Wave. I'm not necessarily going to sit here and say, oh my god, 80s New Wave, wank, wank, wank. However, this is one of the situations where I think I actually prefer the original as opposed to this creation. And I'm not necessarily downgrading this this version of the song. I'm not necessarily saying that it's a bad version of the song. It's just not one of those tracks that really needs this sort of treatment. It kind of needs to have that, sort of simpler idea to it. It needs to have that simpler formation, that simpler build. Because whenever you kind of over-exasperate it, whenever you do a little bit too much to it, it actually just sounds very, very average, very run-of-the-mill. There's nothing very special about it. It's kind of a nice idea to have a harder-edged version of this song where, the best treatment it probably would have gotten aside from this would have been probably by one of the punk goes pop artists, which would have just been terrible. However, at the same time, the original, I think, still stands on its own two legs, probably better than any version will ever. However, this is just a one-track journey that is kind of strange. This is only a one-track deviation. The rest of the album definitely has that same purity to it. And really, this cover has that same purity to it as well. It's just that it doesn't feel like that is what's required for this track. It's almost a song that really requires more of a boastful element to it, almost like a gentleman, or in this case, gentlemen, that are boasting with a lot of swagger, that are boasting with a lot of pride, that definitely don't have that. They don't necessarily have to thrash through in order to really get noticed. It's definitely very, Vogue, very fashion police, very, walking down the catwalk, walking down the runway, and you have your sunglasses on, and everyone's like, why the fuck is he doing that? And, of course, the Corey Hart response would be, or in this case, the movie response would be, because whenever you're this cool, the sun doesn't truly set on you. Overall, this album has a nice feel to it. It has a really nice justification, not to mention it has an excellent flow. It's definitely an album that, as I've said with a couple of the more recent reviews, has an excellent pattern to it where you can get through it and it's not going to be bogging itself down or bogging you down with its ideas. The only thing that I feel is that sometimes this whole formula that they have for their music can become a little bit monotonous. And even with an album as short as this one, the feel to it, the formula to it, the construction of it can sometimes feel like, do a little bit more with it, explore the horizons a little bit. But at this point, Arsis has been a band that has been really beguiled by trying to surpass some excellent and huge expectations directly out of the gate. And sometimes that is not an easy thing to do. And sometimes it's just really not in your blood to write an album that is absolutely spellbinding and also boasts a detailed amount of variety. People that really like the melodic death metal scene, people that really like technical death metal, people that really enjoy speed and ferocity will definitely enjoy this album. They will definitely find this to be a welcome comeback. They will feel welcomed by Unwelcome, as weird as that sounds. Those who are a lot more intertwined with many of the dark arts of the heavy metal genre, many of the different subgenres of the heavy metal genre, may feel as though it's lacking a little bit, that it definitely needs a little bit more to really boost its stylistic integrity, to kind of boost up its score. And unfortunately speaking, I am one of those people. I feel that this could have had a little bit more on it. This could have had a little bit more to really offer. However, what I heard was definitely decent. It definitely is more than passable. In fact, it's definitely good. It's kind of on the fringe of being great. It's an album I would probably give a 7.75 out of 10 to. Not quite 4 stars, so we would say 3.5. It's definitely one of those things where I feel like Arsis is... They don't feel as, or seem as lost as they did. I really was not a huge fan of We Are the Nightmare, but hey, potato, potato. But I really think that this is a good album, and definitely one that tech death fans or mellow death fans will definitely get into. So, if you're one of those people, check it out.